Hello world, you can call me Moss, and it's been a while since I've made my last video. While it may be summer, I decided to take on a summer job, meaning I've been working 3 jobs, and it was a pretty cool experience getting to do things related to what I enjoy, that being art, books, and Dungeons and Dragons. The hour-long bus rides and having to walk 20 to 40 minutes to and from the bus stop was less than stellar though. While I was at this job, I got to do lots of things related to ceramics and screen printing. And while screen printing was an interesting thing to learn about, and equally stressful, and while screen printing was an interesting thing to learn about, it was equally stressful for me to actually do. And it's also the least relevant to what I'm drawing. For now. Having a tote bag or a jacket with my silly little creatures on them would be pretty cool. I haven't had a whole lot of time to record, or at least I didn't make much time to. I'd recorded a few drawings, but then I'd have to figure out what I'd talk about and edit down hours of footage, which is way harder than I thought it would be when I started. I think 25 minutes is a lot of time to have to fill, but I'm currently not sure how to do it. I'm still trying to get into the groove, and I don't think I've truly thought about what I want to document. The idea of having something to look back on is lovely, but actually making the thing to look back on is a whole different thing. But I suppose now that I'm here again, you, whoever is watching, gets to watch me struggle drawing legs and figure out how to design stuff. You also get to hear about my summer experience and maybe what I'll be doing this coming school year. Hopefully I'll get to make another video before school starts for me, but we'll see. Anyway, yeah, ceramics and my job. We ended up making these ceramic tiles that we screen printed on, and while I'd like to talk about what we actually made, or even show an example of how the tile looks, I know it's going somewhere in my city, and I don't want to be found. I know lots of people like to put their name out there, but I don't think I'm there yet with the interwebs, internet safety and all that. I did get to take the one that has me on it home because part of it exploded. It can't go up for the public piece because of that, but I still think it looks cool, and I'm debating on what to do with it. There was an air bubble stuck in the clay pretty close to the surface, so instead of like the whole thing exploding into pieces, a circle kind of came off the surface of it. And so I'm debating on if I'd glue it back or decorate the bare spot that's left from it. But as we got closer and closer to the end of the working season, we had a bit more downtime. This was mostly due to the glazing and firing process. Only our teaching artists, in which there were 2, were actively spraying the tiles we had created with glaze. Once the tiles were glazed, I and my fellow apprentices cleaned them to avoid any glaze being close to the bottoms of them. If that's not done, then it's possible they could stick to the kiln shelf, and we wouldn't get the tile back in one piece. For those who don't know, glaze is kind of like colored sand, and when sand is exposed to high temperatures, it turns into glass. We know, as when loading the kiln, one of our teaching artists put a tile in glaze side down, and she had to break and chip and stab the tile off of the shelf it melted onto. Now, you might be wondering, how do you do that? So, the clay we were using, when it's dry, it turns basically white, or at least like a very light gray, and the glaze was also white. And so we tried to dye it pink, but not enough dye was put into it, so it was still fairly light once the glaze was dry. And so you couldn't really tell unless you were paying attention, and she was most likely on autopilot. Either way, we did lose a tile to it, so it's nasty stuff. We also ran out of glaze at one point, and since the location we were in didn't have big enough quantities of it in stock, we had to wait a few days for more. Once it came, we went right back to work before the sprayed tiles went into the kiln. And, well, while they're in there, we don't see them for 2, maybe 3 days. Suffice to say, there was a lot of waiting. So we got to work on our own projects. My specific project I'll probably make its own video about because I'm very happy with what it was and how it turned out. I'm also waiting to get them back since they were all being misfired before our job was over. But I made these little ceramic figures. Once we had our celebration at the end of the work season, I couldn't help but think about making more things out of clay. After all, I went home with 8.5 pounds of clay and 6 colors of underglazes I didn't have to buy myself. And so my mind went to birch, one of my little tree creatures I made in one of my previous videos. But there's one itsy little problem. Birch has stick legs, which works fine in 2D, but when making things out of clay, you typically want something thicker, because it's less likely to snap if you happen to look at it slightly weird. This goes the same for the thin branches on their head. So I had this in my brain. I was watching the streamer who's also a ceramicist, the Midori House, and was having a pretty good time. At some point, the conversation shifted to more autumn-related things, like candy corn, and it got me thinking about maple trees. Then it hit me. If I can't make birch, then I'll simply make another little fellow. Generally, when making these creatures, I try to avoid circles. I mean, the whole video in which I was designing birch was me changing their shape from circles because I felt like they made them too similar to my character Dirt. And, like the species in general of, like, the tree creatures. Because the first one I made was very circular in shape. And I was like, no. So I went with an oval, slapped some legs on it, and immediately fell in love. There's just something about her round shape and little dot eyes that I like. But then I thought, well, maybe I shouldn't go with my very first idea. Make iterations. It's a pretty good thought. But still, my first idea was way better. I didn't have a concrete idea when I started making her, so I was just throwing spaghetti at a wall. But I liked the cutesiness of the first design, so I went with it. And because I know I want to make her into a ceramic figure, I also needed to make sure the chance of the leaves breaking off wasn't as high, so I put them closer to the body. There was also brief debate of giving her a tail, but this goes back to my thing about making her species different from Dirt and his species, which have tails. I still think it would be cute though, so if not the tails that they originally had, I think it would be neat for them to have short tails made of leaves, making it more like a tuft of feathers. I think that could work, since my inspiration for the legs of them were chickens, as their legs look scaly. I will add, if I do make a little ceramic maple, I am legally obligated to make an army. There is no such thing as only making one. I think maybe for the next semester, I should make a goal to actively work and focus on one project. Or at least as much as I can, since I will be doing school and still working my 2 jobs. Anyway, I have a lot of story ideas and characters and ideas for characters, but nothing can get done if I'm jumping around from one thing to the next. Especially when they all have their own universes, magic systems, and rules. So maybe I can focus on the universe that these creatures I've been making exist in first. I already have bits and bobs of information lying around anyway. Speaking of which, I need to figure out something with Maple and Birch. I think they would be cool to exist, like, be a somewhat sizable part of this universe, or like the story that I might be making, because I think it would be really cool to make this like sort of graphic novel, maybe. So I think Maple and Birch would be good friends. Perhaps Birch is more of a wanderer, traveling to far off places. It's not too uncommon for their kind, though Birch does it more for the adventure rather than finding a place to settle down. It's about the journey, not the destination. Perhaps Maple Perhaps Maple is the younger one of the two, and, while wanting to experience the things unknown the world has to offer, doesn't feel comfortable enough to leave her forest. She's always heard stories from the old sugar maple trees that weren't born there but had traveled from other forests. Caves with the sparkliest of gemstones, bugs as big as their thick legs that are hundreds of rings wide, and the flurry of seeds on the fluffiest of plumes. Beautiful things she'd love to witness herself. It's not like roots keep her there. She could always leave. And Birch comes along. Usually they're not one to wander through forests. There's always someone trying to persuade them that their forest is the perfect place to settle. But Maple has never seen this tree before. They must have seen grand things like the elders, right? And well, she wasn't going to miss the chance to find out. Hello, you. Thank you for making it halfway through the video. For doing so, you have made it to the quest point. Your quest is as follows. Drink water of any amount. If you do not have water near you, go to where you typically source water and get a drink from there. Your reward for completing this quest is feeling more hydrated and one happy sprout of your choice. Maybe I should turn this into an actual sort of short story and make a video with illustrations of it. Or like animation, which I know is a lot of work, but what labor of love doesn't require it? And well, I think it would be cute. You know what? Maybe this, or something like this, should be my project for the semester. A big thing I want to get out near the end of the year. I'll have to think on this. My finals might try and keep me from it. Speaking of school, I'll be taking a ceramics hand building class this fall semester, so that should be cool. I really wanted to take a wheel throwing class because I don't know how to wheel throw. But the only class available for the fall semester was from 6 to 8:50 p.m. I don't really want to be at school so late and get home at like 10. It would also be the days before I have my 8 a.m. class, where I have to get up at 6 to get there on time. Some people are early risers, but I am definitely not one of them. So I think I'll see if there's one at a more favorable time in the spring semester. Either way, taking a ceramics class is definitely something I want to do, especially since my college doesn't have a track specifically for illustration, which sucks because that's kind of what I went in wanting to do. I also plan on joining ceramics club because, well, why not? It will carve out time in my week for me to work with clay and give me people to maybe make friends with. Last year, I don't think I really made friends outside of work. In my first semester, I shared a few classes with the same group of people, but I've never been strong with, interacting, I guess, and making friends. I didn't go out of my way to talk to people and felt intimidated by the idea. It felt like as soon as I was there, people had already found their group of friends, so I don't know. So after classes, I often went off on my own to find my little cubbyhole and wait until I had to go to work. I also played a lot of Snake RX, but that's irrelevant. My point is, I think joining a club would be good for me socially as well as emotionally, since I'll be getting to make stuff I like outside of assignments. Oh, and they also have a ceramics sale, I think every semester? I'm pretty sure you don't have to be part of the club to participate, because at the end of last spring semester, I saw a flyer where you could, like, contact someone to sign up. But I think I'd be more comfortable putting my ring in if I knew other people who'd be doing it. Anyway, I think I've talked at you enough for the time being. I mean, if you're still here, then I guess you liked it. Or you have me on mute and have music playing instead. Or are just generally here for the vibes and the visuals. Either way, thank you for getting this far. I hope you enjoy the rest of the process of me doodling my little tree fella, Maple.